our community's leaders to implement solutions to the problems that plague us. And we're here tonight to make sure that we can organize our people to build enough power to change the injustices in our communities. I was first drawn to this work when my husband and I co-pastored a church in Polk County. Our congregation belonged to our sister organization, Peace, in Polk County. There, on one night in our house meeting, we listened to a young woman tell us her story. When she was 16 years old, she got arrested for a small marijuana buy. And she did all that they asked her to do. She went through a couple programs. She thought she was clean. She finished school, got her nursing degree. But when she went to get her nursing license, she was refused because she had this minor misdemeanor charge, an arrest on her record. It ruined her career and her life. We were outraged and astounded. And as we heard that story, we knew we had to work to make change. So we continued. We joined with other people in our faith communities in Polk County to begin to find ways to create second chances for our children. I've continued to participate in justice ministries now for over 16 years because I believe that God has called me to do justice, to stand up for those who don't have a voice for themselves, and to end systemic injustices. Elder Miles.
Good evening. For years, I've avoided being part of the justice ministry. I was busy running a foundation where I helped at-risk youth and their families. I saw the problems FAST was working on firsthand, but I felt I was too busy to get involved. Eventually, I started participating in the justice ministry because I recognized that my personal self-interest of working with youth and advancing their hopes and their dreams for the at-risk youth I was working with could best be utilized or realized by connecting with other like minds. So this decision allowed me the opportunity to see how the power of people could change the juvenile justice system, as opposed to me standing as a lone individual fighting the system. Being part of the justice ministry has been a meaningful experience for me. Because of the FAST victory that was created with the expansion of the Florida civil citation statute, where thousands of youth are now being labeled for life, are not being labeled for life with a criminal. Over the last 5 years, Reverend Cooley and I have worked together through FAST research committees. It hasn't always been easy. Sometimes it's been tiring, and sometimes it's been stressful. 2 years ago, we got the school district to commit to using restorative practices, or RP as we call it for short, to help manage discipline problems in the schools. RP helps address the root problem of youth misbehavior instead of simply sending them home with out-of-school suspensions, left unsupervised to get into more trouble. School districts that use RP have seen substantial improvements in student behavior. 2 years ago, our district committed to RP. However, they weren't implementing all the pieces to make RP successful. To make sure RP was effective, we asked the school district to hire the experts at the International Institute of Restorative Practices, for short known as IIRP. These experts can provide our schools and our teachers with the resources needed to effectively implement restorative practices and make our school climate better for all. We're excited to announce that after last week's school board meeting and years of pushing for RP, our district finalized a $500,000 contract with IIRP And now our teachers will get the additional training and coaching they need, and thousands of our children will get the help they need to be successful in their school endeavors.
Well, it took us many years of building people power and pushing for this change for it to happen. But that victory started way back in our house meetings with people sharing their stories. If it wasn't for the parents and grandparents and teachers and advocates for children who were open and honest about their struggles, we would never have known that school discipline was such a huge problem. Thousands of children will be helped in our school district because of the hundreds of people who were willing to share their problems with us. Our house meetings are important because they create the space for us where each of our neighbors and our congregation members can share what's really on their hearts. Listening and sharing are the first steps on the road to justice. After we listen to each other's stories, we give them a chance to be a part of the work and fix some of the problems that are impacting them. By inviting them to be part of this work, we're also giving them an opportunity to build relationships, not only with others from their congregation, but others in the community as well. I would never have met Elder Miles if it had not been for FAST. As we've worked together now for more than 7 years to get civil citations, non-arrest options for children in our community and the state, and now implementing our IP in our schools, RP, we have truly become justice-seeking friends and partners. Elder Miles has taught me about the complexities of the juvenile justice system, and we have stood together and each had each other's backs in difficult meetings with the sheriff and police chiefs and school board members and others. He's always been honest with me, and he's held me to a high standard as we work together for our children. I know the sacrifices he has made to do this work and how he lives out his faith with integrity. Thank you, Elder Miles.
Bless you, Reverend Cooley. Getting to know Reverend Cooley and working with her through this ministry has been meaningful to me, because outside of FAST, the ministries of Bethel and Westminster, where Reverend Cooley reside, have had the privilege of jointly working on community relationship building projects. And as a result, Bethel has realized significant financial support for the foundation and employment opportunities for youth. You never know how relationships formed with individual FAST participants could result in a broader impact on the advancement of our community. As we prepare for tonight's house meetings, remember that this is holy work. Remember that we're giving people an opportunity to build meaningful relationships and bring justice to our community. How do we stand?
Best together.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elder Miles. Thank you, Reverend Cooley. Janice, I think you are, oh, wait. First, co-chairs need to approve tonight's agenda and the nominating committee report.
All right, so hopefully, oh, you got it?
No, you got it. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, we need to approve tonight's agenda. You should have in your packet before you, and we're following pretty closely so far. So can we get a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I so move.
Julius, a second.
Seconded.
Okay, recording secretary, did you get the second? You have better ears to not do it.
Excuse me, who seconded that?
Flo.
Oh,
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any discussion? All right, all in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye or put a thumb in.
Aye.
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 Aye. And any opposed now, same sign. All right, the motion passes. We also have a nominating committee report. So I'll let you know, according to our FAST bylaws, we vote to approve executive committee members every fall at our annual assembly. The recommendations about who should be on the executive committee come from an ad hoc nominating committee we establish for a few months every fall. This committee will brainstorm who should be on the executive committee and then ask those people if they'd be willing to serve. We then vote to approve those recommendations at the annual assembly. Nominating committee members cannot nominate themselves to serve on the executive committee. So this year we are recommending Pam Smith from Holy Family Catholic Church to be the nominating committee chair. Pam has been a faithful team leader for over 10 years. She knows our ministry and many of our members very well. So I make a motion to approve Pam Smith as our nominating committee chair.
I second it.
All right, thank you, Deacon Paul, for a second. Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye or put a thumbs
Aye.
up.
Aye.
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 And then any opposed now, same sign. Okay, that motion is approved as well. Thank you all. And we can move to an update on our issues and the investment drive from Janice Metz from St. Cecilia Catholic Church. We have you, Janice. If you're speaking, we don't hear anything yet.
Okay, sorry. As Reverend Cooley and Elder Miles just shared, this month we had a huge victory for our youth suspension and arrest campaign. We worked a long time for it, and we're so excited that the school district has affirmed their commitment to restorative practices and signed a contract that includes training for school staff and monthly coaching for teachers. On top of that, they are doing more in-depth piece called restorative conferencing at 20 schools. And we had hoped for that number, so that's great, which helps children with more severe behavior problems get back on track. You made this happen. Give yourself a round of applause. In July, we had a rally for mental health via Zoom with almost 200 people. Commissioner Peters joined us and affirmed her commitment to push for a central pathway for behavioral health services. This central pathway would make it easy for anyone struggling with mental issues, illness, or addiction to get the help that they need instead of calling dozens of agencies trying to find services. We sent hundreds of emails to the county commission asking them to find the central pathway in the budget for next year. There is a group of providers in our county to fund. We were shocked, however, when the group of providers told the county that they support the plan not to include any funding for the central pathway next year. It's clear we're going to have to do a lot more work. And use all of our people power to get all the stakeholders working together and moving quickly. Our loved ones can't wait any longer for help. Amen? We are having our next committee meeting on this topic on Thursday, October 1st at 6:30 p.m. to determine our next steps. We encourage everyone who is able to attend. We don't have time to review all of the problems we're working on right now, but we have provided detailed written reports for you in the packet for this evening. Please feel free to use this information to update your network members. Finally, a brief update on our investment drive. Our original investment drive goal was 140,000 for this year. Since the pandemic hit, we decreased the goal to 100,000. As of now, we have 80,000 turned in. Right now, only 30% of our network members have invested anything at all. We know that it's been a tough year for a lot of us. Some people who invested 200 before might not be able to do it this year. But it is important that we want everybody, every single network member to be able to invest something. Whether the investment is $10, $200, or $1,000. What's important is that network members understand that they are the ones who run this ministry and own the work. In your packet also, there is a list of ways to invest. Together, we can hit our goal. How do we stand?
Together.
Fast together.
That's
Us
together.
together.
Us together.
Hey, we're going to move on to going over what house meetings will be like. And so we have a model and evaluation of that first discussion question from the house meetings.
All right. Well, thank you, Reverend Keith. Elaine, I'm going to ask you to stop sharing for just a couple of minutes before we jump into that model. We are tonight, just to give you a little bit of format of how tonight's going to go. My name is Jacqueline Reyes. I'm the lead organizer of FAST. So tonight, we are all going to be preparing for our house meetings. So we're going to model what happens at a house meeting. You're going to see a video. We're going to evaluate a little bit, and then we're going to give you a chance to practice it. So you're going to see, for example, a video of question 1 of the house meeting, and then you'll go into breakout groups and you'll actually get to practice it. So I just want to address a couple of things before we actually jump into the video and evaluating. One is that I think it's fair to say for all of us that the coronavirus has thrown everything into the air, right? House meetings is not actually a very accurate title for what most of us are going to be doing this year, which is probably doing our meetings via Zoom. Some folks have opted to do them in person and socially distanced. That's up to you and what you are comfortable with. In the email for tonight, you should have also received a house meeting packet with all of the house meeting materials you'll need. So we sent out 2 packets. One that had all the materials for tonight, one that had all the materials for your house meeting. If you are doing an in-person house meeting and you want printed copies of the house meeting materials to hand out to your folks like we have done in previous years, please let us know by this Thursday and we will mail you a packet of all of the printed copies, right? We recognize that not everyone has access to a printer. And if you're doing a Zoom house meeting, then tonight should give you a pretty good idea of what that looks like. So I want to point out that some folks tonight are not joining us via video, but only via phone. So you will likely have people at your house meeting who don't have a computer, right? So they might not have a smartphone. They might just be calling in. Be aware that even though these folks can't see what's on screen, they can hear, and we want to include them in your conversation, even if we don't see them. So if you are having a Zoom meeting, you should anticipate technology problems. I'm going to say that again. If you are having a Zoom house meeting, you should anticipate technology problems. In fact, tonight for our kickoff, let's expect a glitch or 2. It's probably going to happen. Just the way things are working nowadays. So if I were you, I would give every single person who you're inviting to your Zoom house meeting, not only the link to the video, but also the phone number that they can dial in case their internet gets kicked off for some reason. They can at least call in with their phone and hear the audio, even if they can't see the video. So that's kind of some logistical pieces. Before we jump into the first question, I just want to set up a few things for our model and practices tonight. The first is that the house meeting we'll show you tonight is a real house meeting. Jan and the others in the video filmed it last week, but these were their real stories. Tonight, in your practices, you want to share real stories. Nothing tonight is fake, right? We've asked the folks in the video to share some common pushbacks that you might hear in your house meeting, just so that we can give you an example of how you might handle some different situations. But all of their stories are very real, and we encourage you to share your real stories as well. Secondly, I want to make sure that we all know the purposes of the house meeting. So there are 3 main purposes to our house meetings, and I'm going to put them in the chat right now. The 3 main purposes are: number 1, to build stronger community in our congregations, right? Give people a chance to get to know each other. 2, we want to learn about the problems in our community. And 3, we want to build our justice ministry networks. So we want to remember all of these purposes, right? Our ministry is about relationships. We want to make sure we're strengthening relationships by sharing personal stories, not just asking people to list problems that they see, right? Or that they know of. House meetings are also not a therapy session, right? We're not trying to solve problems that someone shares about, but we are providing them with a space to lift up their concerns, and we are providing them with an opportunity to do something about those concerns. So the last thing that I want to say is that we all have stories. We all have things that worry us. I've heard team leaders say things like, well, our congregation's pretty well off, so they don't really have problems, right? Or, you know, most of our members are older, they don't have kids in schools, you know, they own their houses. They're not really impacted by the, quote, kind of stuff that FAST works on, right? And it's certainly true that there are people in our county that are not personally impacted by expensive housing, or they're not personally impacted by problems in the schools. But that doesn't mean they don't have problems, right? That doesn't mean they don't have people on their prayer list or struggles that worry them or concern them. And I think it's safe to say after the past 6 months that every single person coming to our house meeting at least has something that they're struggling with or concerned about, considering this pandemic that we all have been going through for the past 6 months. So we're going to get started with the first question of the model. And as we show question 1, you are welcome to follow along on your house meeting guide. Jan is going to be starting off at the beginning of the house meeting guide, which in your packet is on, let me see here, she's going to actually be starting off at page 8 of your packet. So Elena, if you can go ahead and pull up the video, that would be great.
I'm so glad you could all be here. Thank you and welcome to this very important part of the work of FAST. We learn in Galatians chapter 6, verse 2, that we are to carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of the Lord. We're here tonight so that we can hear about each other's burdens and share our own. In doing so, we hope to help lighten the load for each other and know that we aren't in this alone. Before I begin, I'd like to go around and have everyone introduce yourself. Please share your name. Let's start with Garth.
Yes, my name is Garth Orberry, and I'm a member of St. Joseph's Roman Catholic Church in South St. Petersburg. Thank you.
And Bruce, how about you?
Yes, my name is Bruce Gotts. I'm affiliated with the Unitarian Universalists of Clearwater.
Great. And Melissa?
Melissa Brahm, and I'm a member of Temple B'nai Israel in Clearwater.
Thank you. And finally, our staff member.
Jessica Sanchez, FAST staff.
Okay, good. Thank you, everybody. Tonight, we're going to share again about our personal experiences and struggles.
Hello.
The conversation is not something our congregation is doing alone, St. Augustine's. These conversations are happening at 40 different congregations across Pinellas County. Over 1,000 people will take
Jackie?
In this time of chaos and stress, it's more important than ever that we take time to listen to each other and share our experiences. We ask that everyone share a personal story, not news items or things you read in the paper. We aren't here to debate, but to listen to each other's experience. Please don't share these stories that you will hear tonight. These are strictly to stay within this group. We are to listen to each other's experiences and keep them inside this meeting. Melissa has kindly agreed to take notes so that we later can anonymously share the stories we've heard with others in the justice ministry and see what common problems are constantly cropping up in our community. Now, we only have 90 minutes and we want to hear from everyone, so Jessica will keep time. Each person has a minute to share their story. Jess will let us know when that minute is up. We'll start with our first question, which tonight is: what struggles are you, your family, or friends facing right now? For instance, perhaps you're struggling to support an elderly parent or parents. Perhaps one of your relatives can't make his rent payment. Perhaps you're struggling to find a job after being laid off or furloughed. Perhaps your prescription or medical costs are just more than you can carry. I think it's fair to say that all of us have struggled in the last 6 months with the ways the pandemic has changed our lives. So we're just going to assume everyone is struggling with some level of stress from that. If you want to share about a COVID-related concern, we ask that you make it specific. For instance, my son's childcare is closed, so I'm having to work and watch him at the same time and struggling to balance those two things. Or perhaps a friend of mine got furloughed and she's struggling to put food on the table. Each of us will have a chance to share for 1 minute. So I'll start. I'm really struggling with a current situation with a very elderly friend whose health has been failing. The social isolation of the last few months has really taken a toll on her, and she is about to be widowed. I worry for her health and her safety at home alone. Her son is very, very far away and doesn't seem inclined to travel at this time for obvious reasons. So my church is kind of trying to step in to take care, but it's kind of an overwhelming situation. That's my story for this evening. For question number 1, Melissa, would you share with us, please, what struggles are you, your family, or friends facing right now?
Well, I put all my faith in God, and I pray to God every day, and He really, I don't have any issues right now. God is taking care of me.
Oh, isn't that wonderful that we all have our faith to help us, buoy us up. But I wonder, Melissa, if you could share some of the concerns that you raised to God, some of the specific concerns.
Well, my biggest concern is, I have so many concerns, but I pray every day for my son-in-law who's suffering from stage 4 cancer, and he has 2 little girls, and of course, he can't work. He is working part-time for our temple, but, insurance and everything is just horrible. And then my husband is bipolar, which he's right now doing good. Last week wasn't doing so good. It's day by day.
Those are some very weighty struggles, Melissa.
Why keep going?
I think maybe we'll start with those. unless there's something else you're really compelled to share.
Those are the main ones.
Well, thank you very much for being so candid about them. I'm glad that you have your time in prayer to help you cope.
My temple family.
Excellent. That's great. Okay. We're going to move on to Garth. Garth, would you share with us what kind of struggle is consuming your powers of worry right now, your family or friends? What things are you facing?
Racial profiling and police brutality, given the context of what happened with George, and the brutality of that, and me being a Black man, that it could have happened to me also what happened to George Floyd. And so it concerns me because even after that incident, there's been so many more incidents of things just like that. It hasn't stopped at all. It hasn't.
Have you had the experience of
Yes,
being
and
stopped?
I'm going to get to that.
Okay.
I was stopped early one morning as I was walking, because I normally go walking in the morning, and the street that I walk on, there are no houses. But midway on the walk, a police car came up and stopped me, and we started to talk. And I normally walk with a stick in my hand early in the morning, so he said he didn't feel comfortable with me holding the stick in my hand, so I threw it down. And so we were having a conversation, and then 4 or 5 police cars pulled up, and they were shining the lights on me. And then after 5 minutes, they pulled away. And so I asked him, what was that all about? He said, a lady said that somebody had just robbed her house. And he said that I fit the description. But the lady, he said, it wasn't me. And so, but just something like that could have escalated into what happened to George Floyd. So I'm worried about that, because there are a lot of innocent Black men that are walking around, and apparently we all fit the description of suspects because of the color of our skin.
A minute.
Garth, I thank you. I thank you so much for sharing that, and I'm personally terribly sorry that you have had to face that. We have become all too painfully aware of these kinds of situations, and again, thank you for your frank telling of that story. And last but not least, Bruce, we'd like to know what concerns you, what struggles are you, family, or friends facing right now?
I think one of our most pressing issues is affordable housing. There's not enough affordable housing in Pinellas County. People have to have 2 or 3 jobs just to be able to pay for their rent.
Absolutely. We are all aware that the problem exists, and as you're probably well aware, we've been working on it. FAST has been working on it for quite a number of years. But is there some way in which this connects to you personally, Bruce?
Yes, my daughter was laid off from her job, and so she was taking a temporary job. So my son-in-law and her are working 11 hours a day, 7 days a week, to be able to make the rent. But for me, most importantly, she's had to choose between medication, which is really life-threatening, and paying rent. But it's a terrible situation. I have tried to help them, and I will continue to try to help them. But the people that just don't have that kind of resource is horrible. It's just absolutely unconscionable in this quote civilized society.
Amen to that. And I'm sure we all appreciate the fact that you are so concerned and grateful that you're able to help out. So thank you. Thank you all 3 for, again, for your frank relation of these stories and concerns. We are going to move on to question 2.
All right, thanks for sharing that video, Elena. So if you have your reactions button, let's go ahead and give Jan a hand clap. No, that was a pre-recorded video, but Jan is on with us tonight, so good job, Jan. I want to go over a few points, and then we're going to go into the breakout group. So first of all, I wanted to point out, the opening that Jan did, kind of explaining the ground rules and why we're here tonight, took about 4 minutes or so, which is pretty typical in a house meeting. We are working to establish an Arts and Justice Committee at FAST. And the original group of folks who just had their first meeting last month to kind of brainstorm what that committee would look like wanted to make a suggestion that during this opening, you can add something like a song or a poem or, a reading from your faith tradition, something that's going to connect to the people that you're inviting, if you think that would be helpful. You can feel free to add something in there during that kind of opening. One thing that Jan did really well was she told her story first. So let's see, Teresa, can you unmute yourself real quick? Why do you think it's important that Jan told her story first?
Well, for one, to give an example of the flow and to be specific and how her problem impacts her relationship probably with everybody else.
Okay, thank you, Teresa. You can mute yourself. Yeah, so she was leading by example, right? There were a couple things that Jan was leading by example. One, logistically, is the time, right? If you tell a 3-minute story, everyone else in your house meeting is going to tell at least a 3-minute story. So you want to keep yours brief, remember, to a minute. More importantly, Jan shared about something personal to her. And she really set the tone and gave people permission that this is a space where we are sharing personal concerns that might feel a little bit vulnerable, right? Or might feel like something we wouldn't normally share. So Jan, I think, did a really good job kind of setting that tone. So again, as Teresa said, she led by example, and you as a house meeting leader want to do the same. You always want to answer the question first, and you want to think about what you're going to share ahead of time, right? If you say, what really keeps me up at night is watching the news. It's so stressful. I'm really just struggling with that. I guarantee you every other person in your house meeting is also going to commiserate that watching the news is stressful, right? But if you share something personal, they likely will as well. So to ensure that everyone responded, Jan asked people individually, right? This is another really important step. She didn't just lift it up, she asked people individually. This is especially important because we know that some folks are talkers and some are not, and that's fine, right? But we want everyone to get a chance to share, so we want to call on everyone individually. And finally, I want to mention that Jan did a really good job of asking follow-up questions. So Kitty, maybe can you unmute yourself? Do you remember a follow-up question that Jan asked in this video?
Yes, when the lady from the temple said that she takes everything to the Lord in prayer, she said, well, I'm sure you do, but give me an example, please, of some of the things you take to the Lord in prayer. And then she responded with very specific serious problems.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Kitty. Yeah, Jan said, that's great. I'm glad that you can have that strong faith and strong prayer life. What are some of the things you lift up in prayer, right? And again, when Bruce kind of said, affordable housing, right? Jan followed up and said, well, how does that touch you specifically, right? Have you had personal experiences? So you as the house meeting facilitator are going to want to ask some of those follow-up questions if people aren't sharing something personal, or if there are details, if someone shares about their child in school, you might want to ask, well, what school, what grade, what subject are they struggling with, etc. So we're going to go into breakout groups now. I'm going to go ahead and split people into breakout rooms. You will go automatically there and you will have 15 minutes. You should have a facilitator. I can guarantee you there's going to accidentally be someone who doesn't end up in a breakout group. Just give me a second and we will get you to the right place. chat. Maybe if you know how to chat, type in something you learned or something you got out of that first practice group.
Okay, how do I go back? Because it told me to push the button to go to the main meeting, so I'm just saying.
You're in the right place. You're in the main meeting, so you can stay right there. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So as we get back to the main room, please make sure to mute yourself again. And like I said, if you want to put in the chat something you learned in that breakout group or something you got out of it while we wait for everyone to join us.
No, I can push mute. But, you know,
All right. So I think
Jacqueline,
everyone, yep, Reverend Ward.
is there a way to send Polly Cross the script package? She didn't have it in our session.
Yep, we can do that during the next video. Yep.
All right, thanks.
So if everyone can go ahead and mute yourselves, we are going to show a model of the second House meeting question.
Our second question relates directly to some of the problem areas that we're currently working on. For years, our Justice Ministry has been working in the area of criminal justice reform in a variety of ways. We've won diversion programs to get kids help instead of branding them with arrest records. We've gotten commitments for thorough investigations of racial profiling complaints, like the one Garth just shared. We've been working on better and more streamlined access to mental health and addiction treatment so our loved ones can get help instead of ending up in the criminal justice system. We are all aware that national events over the last few months have highlighted the need for this work to continue, particularly the criminal justice reform. We always want our work to be grounded in our own experiences. And so our second question is, what are your experiences with the criminal justice system, with dealing with mental illness, either self or a loved one, or addictions? It's a fairly broad umbrella, but they're all important areas, obviously. Some examples. I could, Melissa actually already shared that she has a loved one with bipolar disorder. It could be about the struggle to find the correct treatment. It could be something on the order of, I forgot to pay a ticket and they've suspended my license. It could be a story about a child with an addiction who didn't get the help he or she needed and ended up being arrested and having to spend time in jail. It could be a story about a loved one who was arrested for a minor offense, now has an arrest record and struggles to find a job. I'll share first, as we did with the first question, and each of us will have a minute. I have, unfortunately, as I think probably almost everybody does, a relative, a very close relative, who has struggled for decades with depression and anxiety and emotional illness, chemical imbalance. This relative has been treated and is basically still alive because of medication. This relative has made a very serious attempt on her life, and although she doesn't live here close by in Pinellas County, the struggle to get help has been ongoing and remains as frustrating as anything I've attempted to do in my life. So while it may not relate directly to the work that's taking place, again, here in Pinellas County, I have tremendous empathy and understand the need for what I've learned is called a coordinated access model to help people find the appropriate treatment, whether it's mental health or addiction. So that's my story in this area. Melissa, would you share with us a little bit more, perhaps, about your husband?
My husband is a retired doctor, and he never had any mental health issues until he has severe asthma, and he was put on a high dose of steroids. And they were worried, but they had to put him on the steroids because he couldn't breathe. And it caused a severe psychotic episode. And I didn't have a clue what was going on. All I knew was my husband, who we've been married 47 years, and this was 6 years ago, so we've been married a long time, was not anybody that I knew. And I mean, it's just amazing how there was no one to help me, you know, and finally someone said, take him to the hospital, where he was Baker-acted and put in, you know, in the hospital. But it's been a 6-year struggle because the medicines work and then they don't.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's just a struggle. And it was horrible.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. That's a terrible strain for your marriage and you, and can't be making life particularly easy. Thank you for sharing.
Not what we thought our retirement would be.
Right, right. Thank you. Garth, do you have again, criminal justice, mental illness, or addiction? An experience you'd like to share?
Yeah. My brother-in-law, after he came back from Vietnam, he really started to drink and to do a whole lot of things. And there really wasn't, no matter what we tried to do, we couldn't prevent him from doing that. And so he had been arrested a couple of times, didn't spend a lot of time in jail or anything like that, didn't went to prison. But then he finally contracted cancer. And then we were dealing with the cancer for quite some time. And then he finally passed away. But I'm sure that the addiction that in the mental health at that time, they really wasn't treating it the way they should have. They were just treating it with Band-Aids. Mm-hmm. And so he finally passed away, and we dealt with that. But that's one case. And a lot of times his was alcohol, and alcohol is legal. And so many more people are addicted to alcohol because they have access to it.
I don't want to interrupt, Garth, but we need to know, is this perhaps again a local?
Yes, right here.
Right here in Pinellas County.
Yeah. He died at the VA hospital a few years ago.
Okay. So really the addiction was never properly
addressed,
treated. Yeah.
No.
And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. And it's so common.
It is.
Addiction to alcohol in particular. It's so
a lot of people they just look at different types of drugs, not alcohol.
Right.
Because alcohol is legal, but it's just as devastating.
And so your brother ended up in the criminal justice system based on his addiction.
Yes, in and out, yes.
Okay. Bruce, will you share with us, please, any experiences that have personally affected you regarding criminal justice system, mental illness, or addiction?
Yes, I need to underline what Garth said. I've been in recovery for over 30 years, and I've had occasion to take AA meetings into jails and prisons. And to the best of my knowledge, there's an excuse now because of the pandemic, but there is no, other than people bringing AA meetings into the jails, I don't see any attempt at trying to change behavior or do any kind of treatment. And it just is absolutely recidivism. I do have a couple of people that have been directly, I sponsored some people, and that's all they maybe do is dry out when they're in prison. But if nothing changes, nothing changes. So they're right back at it again.
Well, we certainly all acknowledge that mental health service and jail are not necessarily terribly compatible. But I wonder, you mentioned that you had brought some AA meetings, done some work with AA for people who are incarcerated. Do you have
Yes.
A particular connection to someone who needs mental health services and isn't getting them?
Well, I mean, many times there are dual addictions. It's just, yes, there's the addiction is usually just a symptom of greater underlying problems. And until those problems are addressed, nothing's going to happen. There has to be a reason to not to use substances that are illegal or even legal. And alcohol is still one of our main concerns. We talk about opioid, but there are considerably more deaths from alcohol, including my own son died from alcohol poisoning. So it's
I'm so sorry. Was your son in and out of the criminal justice system?
Yes. Not here in Pinellas County, but yes. Yeah.
I'm terribly sorry to hear that.
Well,
to lose a child.
Well, I've lost 3, so it's and that's another long story. But anyway, yes.
I'm sorry.
And 2 of them were alcohol. 2 of them were alcohol related.
I'm very sorry. Thank you for sharing that.
Okay, good night, everyone. My name is Jessica. I'm a FAST staff. So let's just quick evaluate this second question. So we want to see if the person leading the house meeting was leading by example. So can we remember if Jan shares something personal about her story? Donna, can you unmute yourself? Can you remember what Jan shared?
Yes, she talked about how she had people in her family with the mental illness and how it affects her family. It affects the whole family and not just the person that's affected by it.
Thank you. So yes, Jen did a pretty good job sharing about something very personal to her, and her honesty set a tone and let people know that it was not only okay, but also she was encouraging to share personal stories. And then after that, she called everyone individually. That it's important because that helped the recorder keep track. And that way we also make sure that everyone gets an opportunity to share. Did she ask good follow-up questions? When Garth was sharing his story, Julius, can you unmute yourself? Do you remember which question Jen asked Garth when he was sharing her story?
She asked whether it happened locally here.
Thank you. Yes, so that those details, that's what we also want to make sure that we know. That's how she found out that has happened here in Pinellas. And then with Bruce, when he was sharing the concerns that he had with the AA meetings, Deacon Barb, do you remember what Jen asked?
Actually, no. I think it might. I think it was something about like bringing the meetings into the jail, and that. Oh, I guess that was his. I think that was his response, that the prisons or local jails were not actually doing much to address addiction inside of the jail.
Right. Thank you. So yes, that's what he was first referring to, then Jen stopped, interrupt him, and then she asked if he had any personal connection with someone who needed mental health. And that's when Bruce brought up his story about his son. So that's what is very important, that we asked further questions, because sometimes people just, they tell us what the concern is, but there is a lot of times personal story connected to this. And then finally, one thing that I want to bring up that we all need to be aware of is, on one hand, it was good that Jen acknowledged each person's story after they shared. In the other hand, you're going to have about 10 to 12 people in your house meeting. So if you stop and share something every single time, you probably will run out of time, or the meeting is going to be super long. We only had 4 people in this model, and it was about 10 minutes. So just keep in mind that you want to find the balance about being empath with their stories, but at the same time, you want to keep everything on track. And now we're going to have some time to go and practice for the second question, and we're going to go into breakout groups.
Hi, Pat. Sorry, I'm trying to put you back in a room. Just a second. Free. We're going to give folks a minute to come back here. All right. So as we're coming back, please make sure you're muted. Okay, so Lori says have an empathetic timekeeper. Yeah, that's a really good point, right? You want a timekeeper who's gonna kind of be able to interrupt people tactfully.
We're gonna take us now we're gone.
All right. Anything else folks learned in that breakout group? All right, we are going to go ahead. I think everyone's back with us now, and we're going to model the last part of the house meeting. So before we do that, however, we need to talk a little bit about the ABCs, and we need to talk a little bit about self-interest. So Linda Stoller, can you unmute yourself for a minute? What is self-interest? I see her talking, but we can't hear you. Let's see. Okay. How about, let's go, Janice Metz. Can you unmute yourself real quick? What is self-interest? Unmute first, Janice. Yeah,
Okay.
there you go.
Self-interest is what's important to you, your values, and things that are important to you, your community, your family.
Right, exactly. So sometimes we hear the term self-interest, and that might make us kind of bristle a little bit, right? It reminds us of like special interest lobbying or some kind of like negative political thing, right? Well, in our justice work, we refer to self-interest simply as something you want for yourself, for your family, for community, right? Something that you want to get out of your life. And so at the end of our house meetings, we are going to be asking people to join with us in this work in the justice ministry, right? And many times when we ask people to make commitments on things, we get pushback. That's just normal, right? I'm a very involved member of my church, and still when someone asks me to do something, my first reaction is like, ooh, I'm real busy, right? I don't immediately want to say yes. So if we want people to participate in this justice work with us, we have to help connect to their self-interest. So Reverend Jen, can you unmute yourself? What might be an example of a self-interest that someone would have, a self-interest that would be fulfilled by participating in justice ministry?
For instance, if you have a child in the education system and you don't feel like they're getting fair treatment in the system.
Right. That would be thank you, Reverend Jen. That would be a strong self-interest of why you might want to get involved. So sometimes they might be issue-based, other times self-interest might be like a value, maybe they value diversity, right? Or maybe they value, the dignity of each individual person, and that might motivate things that they do, right? So all of those are reasons that someone might want to join the justice ministry. But again, sometimes the initial response, right, might be an obstacle to their participating. So when we have an obstacle such as, I'm too busy, we want to help people connect back to their self-interest and what they would get out of this work. So if you look at your packet on page 13, you will see a document called Defining Commitments Using the ABCs. So this is a tool that we use to help folks overcome obstacles and really connect this work with their self-interest. So first, the A, here I can go ahead and probably share my screen here. The A stands for acknowledge, right? So let's see, Pam Smith, can you unmute yourself? Why is it important to acknowledge when someone presents an obstacle? I can't hear you, Pam. Okay, let's go to Reverend Ward. Can you unmute yourself? Why is it important to acknowledge?
All right. Well, it's important to acknowledge because then it shows that you do care about what they're suffering or what they're passionate about or what their self-interest is. So you want to certainly, well, you want to acknowledge whatever their reason for not being able to do what you're asking at the moment. You want to say,
Right.
okay, yeah, I know you're busy. I know you work 2 jobs. I understand. So you're acknowledging what they have posed as a problem.
Right. If we're actually focused on building relationships with people, we have to listen when they tell us things, right? We can't just bulldoze over and say, well, no, it's important, right? Well, no, we need to stop a second and really listen to what they're saying and understand where they're coming from. Thank you, Reverend Ward. So the next piece is bridging back to self-interest. So what this means is connect back to, what they have said their self-interest is or what to be their self-interest. So an example could be, again, I know you're busy. At the same time, I know the reason you're so actively involved is because you really care about being a faithful disciple. Your faith is important to you, and doing justice is another way that we are faithful disciples, right? So you bridge back to what their self-interest is. Now, in a house meeting, that might be the story that they just shared, right? Which we will see in a second in our model. And finally, the C stands for call for commitment, which means ask again. So I know that's a brief rundown of the ABCs. We don't have too much time tonight, but as we go through this final piece of the house meeting and see a model of it, I want you to be thinking about the ABCs and try to see if Jan uses the ABCs in her responses. So we're going to watch that video now.
Well, it's been quite a discussion this evening, and we've shared a lot of very heavy concerns. Sometimes, as I'm sure you've all experienced, it's very difficult to see what we can do about the kinds of suffering that we've experienced or that a loved one has experienced. The good news is that Scripture gives us a roadmap for how to fix these problems. Micah 6:8 tells us we're required by God to do 3 things: do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with our God. Jesus in the New Testament repeats the same 3 requirements: justice, mercy, and faithfulness in the book of Matthew. At St. Augustine's, our congregation is great at faithfulness. I'm sure this is true of all of you. We have beautiful worship services, Bible study, prayer groups, all nurturing our personal relationships with God. And we all participate in mercy ministries. We have our food pantries that we contribute to on a weekly basis. We collect for UTO. We support a mission for children in Haiti. I'm sure all your congregations do similar mercy work. But justice, it takes a little bit more, I think. It's a little bit different. Justice in the Bible, as the way we're meant to understand it, meant holding the pharaoh or king accountable for fair treatment for everyone. Now, in our time, that means making sure, because we're working locally, that our mayors, our school boards, our city councils, etc., are treating everyone equally as well. And though we're required to do justice, we're not quite as experienced with it or as adept at it, because we can't do it alone. We need power to do justice, the power of God working through large numbers of organized people. So we bring together our 40 congregations across Pinellas County through FAST to do justice together. Every year we hold a Nehemiah Action, bringing together thousands of people, and in front of those people, we ask our community leaders to take concrete steps to fix the problems facing our community. We want to achieve even more this year, so at St. Augustine's, our congregation's goal is to bring 50 people to the 2021 Nehemiah Action. We're a very small church, so that's a pretty ambitious goal. We can do it. We can achieve it if we all work together. The way we'll make it happen is through our Justice Ministry Network. Justice Ministry Network members commit to attend 4 community gatherings every year. Now, COVID-19 has changed the format of these assemblies, as we probably won't be able to gather anywhere near 700 people in person for quite a long time. They might be virtual assemblies. They might be drive-up assemblies. We'll solve those problems, but we do know we will get our people power up and working. Now, our first assembly is October 26th, and at this gathering, we all vote on the problem areas to devote our focus to during the next year. The next assembly after that, the rally, will be March 8th. We'll hear reports from research committees, and we will vote to approve solutions that we want to see implemented in our community. A few weeks later, on March 22nd, again, we're in 2021, we will bring, each of us, bring 3 people with us, a minimum of 3 people, to the Nehemiah Action, where we will present the solutions we have devised to decision makers in our community. And finally, the 4th big assembly is the Joshua Assembly. That'll be May 10th, when we meet back together to celebrate the results we've achieved in the community and to thank the officials who followed through. We network members commit to come to these 4 assemblies and to bring a minimum of 3 people to the Nehemiah Action. Network members are also invited to invest $200 annually to sustain the ministry. Other things you can do, if you want to, you can be on a research committee, but those are the basic requirements of each of us. 4 events, 3 people to Nehemiah, and if possible, an investment of $200. The 4 basic requirements to fulfill our role as Justice Ministry Network members. Now, attending 4 assemblies might not seem like a very big commitment, but it's critical that all 4 are priorities on our scheduling, because it's us, our network members, me and you, who get 3,000 people in the room, so we can win more affordable housing, so we can get a coordinated access model to provide more appropriate and better suited mental health care, and better equality of justice for everyone in our community. I choose to do more than being a network member. I'm a Justice Ministry team leader. So I will be responsible for a team of 10 Justice Ministry Network members. if you say yes today, you'll be on my team, and I will do everything I can to keep you updated, to keep you aware of what work is taking place. But again, being a network member for assemblies, 3 or more people to the Nehemiah Action. Melissa, I would like very much for you to join us in this work. Will you commit to being a Justice Ministry Network member?
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Great, great. I love it when I get an answer that direct. Thank you, Melissa. So you are on board to attend the team assembly on October 26th at 7 p.m., which obviously will be taking place virtually.
I'll be there.
Correct? Great. Yeah. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you. Garth, moving on to you. Will you commit to pursuing the work of FAST by being a Justice Ministry Network member?
You see, I'm scratching my head. I'd love to, but I'm just so busy right now. I have too many things on my platter at this time.
I understand, Garth. I really do. It is sometimes for me, I want to say, this is not my full-time job. And yet, knowing how important the work we're doing, especially now during COVID, knowing how important this work is, I managed to carve out time for it. And I know, Garth, that that was such a compelling story that you shared with us about the experience with the police and being stopped on your morning walk because you're a Black man. I know this work is important to you, and I believe that you can carve out the time to make it happen. Will you try, Garth? Will you be a Justice Ministry Network member?
You convinced me, because I don't want anyone else to experience what I have experienced.
Exactly.
Sure.
Exactly. Thank you, Garth. That's terrific. October 26th, 7 p.m., our rally. You'll be there, right?
Thumbs up. All right.
Thank you. Thank you. And finally, once again, Bruce, I am sorry you're always the last one, but it helps. It helps in the future to go in order. Bruce, will you commit to being a Justice Ministry Network member?
Yeah, I'd like it, but $200 is a lot of money. You know, this is, I got a lot of increased expenses because of COVID-19.
I understand. I do. I know it's a lot of money. And most of us are already committed to supporting our churches or temples. And you have already shared with us that you're supporting a daughter and son-in-law. And I appreciate that so much. We will do our best to work with you to help find a way for you to make your personal investment of $200. We can do it over time, perhaps, but I want to stress, Bruce, that the heart of this commitment is showing up for these 4 assemblies and bringing a minimum of 3 people with you to the Nehemiah Action. So if you can see your way clear to make that commitment, we'll work on getting the investment done.
Well, when you put it that way, Jan, you know, because I think the work you're doing is extraordinarily important. So yes, I'll try. I'll be a network member.
Great, thank you, Bruce. Okay, again, we'll see one another virtually at the team assembly on October 26th at 7 p.m. Thank you all for this time that we have been privileged to share. Thank you.
All right, so thank you again, Jan, for closing out our final video. So first, I want to just get some feedback. What is something that Jan did well? If anyone wants to maybe raise your hand or just unmute yourself and share. What do you think something Jan did well?
This is Jean.
She did a good job of acknowledging the opposition or what have you.
Okay, thanks, Reverend McClendon. Reverend Cooley, you were going to say something?
Yeah, and she also did a great job of bridging back to their self-interest. I think that's an art and a skill.
Okay, and Anna, I see you raised your hand. Anna Ehrlich.
Yes, I think she did a great job of not letting the investment part become an obstacle. She didn't say, oh, don't worry about it, that we'll work together, but she brought it back that, will you still commit to showing up and being there, because that's the most important thing to do. And that we'll work with you and maybe we can work out a plan. I thought that was great because, you know, given what's going on with the economy and everything, that's probably an obstacle we'll all hear a lot.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's important to mention in regards to the $200 pushback, you know, Jan used the language of we'll find a way, right? We'll find a way for you to do the $200. I might even use the language of explaining why we ask, right? So, you know, we invite network members to invest $200 in the ministry because if everyone did, we wouldn't need any outside funding, right? But that being said, it's not mandatory, right? So making sure people know like this is not a pay to play system. You don't have to invest to be part of it. But the main reason we mention the investment piece is because we don't want people to be surprised, right? When they come to the rally and someone mentions investments and they go, wait a minute, what? I haven't heard of that, right? So we want to make sure that they know ahead of time that that's something network members are invited to do if they want to and if they're able. In regards to the ABCs, let's see, who's someone I haven't called on yet? Reverend Lois, can you unmute yourself with Garth? Did Jan acknowledge his obstacle?
Yes, very specifically.
Okay.
I mean, she knows he's a very busy man. Obviously, she knows him, right? And we know a lot of times we know the people we invite quite well. So she knows he is, but she also got back, you know, she went back to his self-interest, and that really convinced him he needed to be part of it.
Yeah, she brought it back to his self-interest being the story that he shared, right, about being stopped while he was walking. And in the context of a house meeting, bridging back to someone's self-interest, like I said before, is probably going to be the story that they shared. I do want to point out that Jan, when it comes to Bruce, she kind of helped him problem solve, but she didn't actually bridge back to his self-interest that time. So if I were evaluating Jan, I would tell her, you know, I think she did a good job of walking him through why he didn't need to pay the $200. I would have followed it up with a little bit more connection to his self-interest before you ask. But that being said, you know, sometimes I know as team leaders and clergy, we get a little bit uncomfortable asking folks to do things. I think sometimes we feel like we don't want to guilt people, which is right. We don't want to guilt people, right? If anyone leaves making a commitment because they feel guilted, we did something wrong. By kind of show of hands or use your reaction button, do we think that Jan was relational in this model?
Yes.
See some thumbs up. Okay. So I think it goes to show that you can ask people for commitment in a way that is very genuine and relational without going too far over the line, right, and guilting them, right? And so I think that it's important. There were a couple times where Jan maybe used a little bit of language that I would tweak. So she said in the beginning with Melissa, I would very much like if you could join us. I might instead just say, you know, Melissa, will you be a network member? Other than those little things, though, I think Jan did a really, really good job. And so again, applause to Jan. Thank you for showing us this model. We're going to go into our breakout groups now. And one person in your group is going to get a chance to ask. This is very important. Only your facilitator should give pushback. I know we all would love to be the tough cookie who tells them no for a variety of reasons. For sake of time, only one person, the facilitator, should say no. Everyone else should say yes. So we're going to put you into breakout groups now. We'll see you in about 15 minutes. We're going to continue on in just a few minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Do you want us sharing in the chat or in person?
Yeah, if you want to put in the chat something you got out of this
Okay. Got
meeting or something you learned, that would be great. We just have the next steps to go. So I'm going to ask Reverend Keith to lead us in our next steps. And then I believe Reverend Dixon is going to be closing us out in prayer.
All right, thank you all. So here's what's coming up. And so I'm going to list a bunch of meetings, but just I'll say in advance, every single one of these will be hosted on Zoom. So none of these meetings I'm about to mention are in-person meetings. They're all Zoom. So the first one to make sure is on your calendar tonight is the team assembly. That's on Monday, October 5th at 6:45 p.m. And this will be for all team leaders and all house meeting hosts, which is mostly overlapping, but anyone who's leading a house meeting, any team members, come to the team assembly, and that'll be on Zoom. The second thing is the first of our 4 big assemblies, the annual assembly. That's on Monday, October 26th at 7 p.m., also on Zoom. That is for all team leaders and network members. So all the folks that are gonna say yes after you do your ABCs at house meetings, all those folks, that's the first thing you're gonna ask them after they say yes. And you'll be at the annual assembly, Monday, October 26th at 7 p.m. Some other meetings coming up, we have some committee meetings. So the YSA, Youth Suspensions and Arrests Committee meeting, there's one on Thursday, September 10th at 6:30 p.m. on Zoom. There's a housing committee meeting on Monday, September 28th, 6:45 p.m. on Zoom. And a criminal justice committee meeting Thursday, October 1st at 6:30 p.m. You guessed it, on Zoom. So to get the Zoom invitations to any of those meetings, just contact your organizer, or you can email FAST in general, fastsecretary2004@gmail.com. And just another quick note before I turn it over to Reverend Dixon, we're gonna ask anyone who is a table facilitator, the group leaders tonight, all clergy members and board members of FAST, if you'll stick around after we close in prayer tonight for a quick evaluation. So with that said, Reverend Dixon, please close us in prayer.
Yes. Our gracious God, creator and sustainer, as we come tonight, Father, we just say thank you for allowing us to gather and work towards justice. Now, Father, as we leave this Zoom call, I just ask that you grant us the ability to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with you, Lord. Now, bless us, keep us, protect us from all hurt, harm, and danger as we serve you. This we ask in your precious Son's name. Let us all say amen.
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 Amen. Amen.
Amen.